going on, everybody? I'm Jason, this is Tennessee Mountain Homestead, and today we're going to be doing a video on this 2001 Murray Widebody LT that I found at my local scrapyard. So this tractor has a Briggs & Stratton 12.5 horse flathead, a 40-inch cutting deck, and from what I can tell, it has a Peerless MST 205 gear drive transmission. The first thing we're going to do is test the engine for compression, spark, see if there's any gas in it, and see if she'll crank. I don't have an actual engine compression tester. However, I can turn it over by hand, and it feels to be pretty good. Next thing we're gonna do is check the oil. So the oil looks clean, but it's well below the full mark. And I just happen to have some 5W30 on hand. Fill it up. So the oil's full to the top of the dipstick, and it took an entire quart. The fact that the oil was clean but a quart low don't sound too good. Let's move on to the spark plug. Looks a little black, a little bit wet. That means it probably burns a little bit of oil. All right, guys, so I knew this thing didn't have an ignition switch in it, but now that I look under the gas tank back in there with a flashlight, someone just took a pair of cutters and just chopped off the whole thing. The wires are all just underneath there hanging. So I've got a wire coming from the battery straight to the front. I'm gonna directly jump the starter out and test the spark plug. So it looks like we've got good spark. The starter obviously spins pretty good. We're gonna thread this spark plug back in there and put a little bit of gas in it. Real quick, something else I noticed is the fact that the engine was really low on oil, and it looks like someone's been adding oil to this thing for it to be that clean, and I think I found the problem. Right down in here is where all this oil residue and grass shavings and just dirt is caked up from years of oil leaking, and it's probably coming from this dipstick and this bolt right here that drains the oil. I know these things are notorious for leaking, especially if they're not tight, and while it's running, if that rubber gasket, there's an O-ring in there, I think, if that's bad, that could be the culprit. Let's hope that's the case and fire this thing up. One more thing I'm gonna check before I crank this thing up is the air filter, and it looks good. All right, I got my jumper cable, we got air, spark, and fuel. Let's see what happens. Guys, as you saw in the last clip, this thing fires right up and it runs all right. It does not run good full throttle, but it runs good par throttle. So that's kind of telling me that maybe one of the jets in the carburetor needs to be cleaned, but that's a whole other video. I don't know about you guys, but I want to see this thing run under its own power today. Only problem is we got 3 out of 4 tires that are completely flat and the front left is off the bead. Just so happens that we've got the same size wheels and tires off of Stefan's Wheel Horse that we don't need. And if those don't work, I've got inner tubes for the front and back that we picked up on the way home today. super easy, problem-free process of changing the tires out. All 4 of them have new inner tubes. Let's get them back on the mower. Before we let this thing back down off the jacks, we're gonna drop the deck. The last thing we need before we can take this thing out for a ride is a seat. I happen to have a seat that I bought at Tractor Supply a few months back that I didn't need for my tractor, so we're gonna temporarily put it on this one. I put the tracks on here with a couple of self-tapping screws, and all we gotta do is adjust the width on the seat, and it should slide right in. All right guys, here we go. So the deck's off, the tires have air in them, we got a seat, and believe me, that was a totally painless, carefree operation. The seat went right on with no problems. Next, we're gonna take this thing outside and test the transmission.
Doorbell ring. It's much too late to not be anything. Reluctantly I answered, got sucker punched again. A trail of breadcrumbs blowing in the wind. I went down that road again. I went down that road. I went down that road. I went down that road. Driving to the airport, the rain was coming down. My memories were 6 feet underground. Then I see it exit 29 a mile ahead. My muscle memory takes the wheel again. I went down that road again. I went down that road. I went down that road again. I went down that road. I went down that road. I went down that road.
All right, cool guys. I think I'm gonna take that as a win. Now, I need to address why it's not running full throttle. Like the motor runs pretty good, only when I try to bump it up to full speed, it starts to break up. I think that's a simple carburetor issue. Besides that, future plans, I think it's just gonna get a pulley swap, a mild one. I don't think it needs to be doing 50, but pulley swap, maybe some all-terrain tires, and we'll get rid of all the stuff underneath it don't need. It's gonna need a new key switch, and we'll figure out if we can get the headlights working. Other than that, I hope you guys had a good time. We had a good time today getting this thing fixed up. It went from a pile in a scrapyard to running and driving, something that Mabel Grace will be able to drive around. So anyways guys, once again, Please comment, like, and subscribe. My name's Jason. This is Mabel Grace. This is Tennessee Mountain Homestead, and we'll see you on the next one.